Good afternoon, everybody. If you have trouble hearing me, just raise your hand and I'll talk louder. My name is Bill, and I am a person in long-term recovery. Clap your hands. What it means to me is that today I am living the dream. Today I believe in God. I believe in miracles. I believe that recovery is possible, and I am not ashamed. I speak out loud about recovery because guess what? Somebody's got to do it. Good morning, everybody. It's a privilege to have this opportunity to share my personal experience with you. My name is Bill Carruthers, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. What does that mean? That means that 10 years ago, I was in a really, really bad place, and I decided to engage a process to change my life, which was community mental health, community addictive disease support services. It was a homeless shelter. It was all those traditional things that take place in the community that are sometimes fragmented and sometimes work, sometimes don't work, but sometimes people really take those things for granted because those are the bedrock services. Those are a bedrock of community. So I engaged those services for about 2 years, and after about 2 years I had enough clarity and I reached that crux, that dilemma that so many people come to, which is, how am I going to survive now? And my personal position at that point was having a criminal history, having an addiction history, not having an employment history. But in our community in Savannah, Georgia, at that time, there was a message being passed around. And that message was being passed around amongst our community service boards, addicted disease services, and that was that there was an experimental project and they were looking for people in recovery that had the level of recovery to be able to do this new experimental thing called Opening Doors to Recovery. And I was at that time going to aftercare, and I remember going there and my substance abuse counselor said to me, Bill, there's this job opportunity that we believe is just for you. And I couldn't really fathom that there was a job that was for me. And at the time I was cleaning floors for some people from my church, and I pretty much thought that was where I was going to be. That was pretty much my my goal, and I felt that was as far as it was going to go. And but after constant encouragement, I ended up going to an interview at Healthcare Staffing. And I'll never forget that day. I walked in, and at that time I didn't have a GED, I didn't have a resume because I hadn't worked. And I was very hesitant and did not believe, and I think believe is a key word for this interview, I didn't believe that it was going to be a positive result, but I went anyway. And I walked in, and there was a screening process, and then God had a process that was taking place as well. And this lady walked up to me and she asked me, was I there for the interview? And I said yes, and she said, follow me. And at that point she shook my hand, and to be honest with you, I still haven't recovered from the handshake. But anyway, we went to begin the interview, and it was during that process that she asked me to see my resume, and I told her I didn't have one. And we kind of debated whether or not everybody should have one, and etc. Anyway, didn't have that, and she asked me to see my credentials and paperwork, and I didn't have credentials, and I didn't have the GED. But just suffice to say that I didn't have a lot of the pieces that it took to execute that process. But she still said, well, I tell you what, let's just sit down and we will do the interview portion, and we'll just go from there. So we sat down and we had a conversation, and to me that's what it was. And she asked me some questions that kind of spoke to what judgment looks like in certain situations. And after we got through, she said to me, well, I can't guarantee you anything, but we're going to send this up the ladder. And she said to me, I don't know why, but I'm going to give you one of the highest recommendations I've ever given anybody. And so at that point, I still didn't know what was taking place. Majority of my life, I missed the message. However, I ended up going to another interview with the company, Gateway, and when I went to that interview, a lady walked up to me and said to me, oh my God, I can't believe it. And when that happened, she said, you're not going to believe it. A couple years ago, I went to a CIT training at the recovery place, and I heard you speak. And when I left that interview, I said to myself, that's the guy we need to have for our team. And here I am a year later, and the very lady who said that I would be perfect for the job was interviewing me for the job. And I still didn't know what was going on. I actually thought that I was in a physical process. I thought that I was just having a normal experience. Needless to say, I was successful with that portion of the interview, and then they ran into my history. And when they ran into my history, it was quite an obstacle. And this is the part that's important to know, that a lot of people, a lot of agencies that don't traditionally work together came together, and they did an incredible thing. They moved a mountain out of the way. They achieved a waiver from the governor, and I got a chance. They advocated for me to give me a chance, and I took the chance. And like I said at the beginning of the interview, my name is Bill Carruthers. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I've had an incredible opportunity to design programs, to manage programs, to do some really incredible work in the recovery field, had an opportunity to do messaging all across the country, had an opportunity to go to the White House, had an opportunity to meet presidents and their wives, and just all kind of things that I never could have imagined, things that are absolutely life-changing. And I finally figured out that I was a human being having a spiritual experience, and I attribute a great deal of that success. First and foremost, I just thank God, but I accredit a great deal of that success to the fluidity, the flexibility, to the values that drive healthcare staffing, and they can drive us all. I know that probably one of the most important issues in our community today is recovery and employment, and I know there's a crux where people who are in recovery start to search for employment, and that's an overwhelming process for entry level. I know that healthcare staffing is right there in the middle of that equation, and I know that when I was in that place, I came in, I didn't have the GED. They made concessions, they gave me time to get it. I remember they called me and said, do you need more help? Do you need more support? Do you need more assistance? And it was genuine. I know that all of that. And then today I'm the Director of Peer Workforce Development and Training for Highland Rivers in North Georgia. Today I'm living the dream. And today I consider the people at healthcare staffing my friends, not just an employer. I've never had a relationship like that. I think it's way beyond traditional. I think it's a spiritual relationship. I know that I still haven't recovered from the handshake. However, it's probably too late to file a claim on that. But I do claim them as my friends. I claim them as part of what I can now call the miracle that changed my life. And that's what people need. Sometimes people need a chance. And so I'm just very, very grateful, profoundly grateful to have had this opportunity to speak to you. And I'm just going to keep coming back every time they ask me. How's that going? Yep.
So if you believe that recovery is possible, clap your hands. If you're committed to what we're doing, clap your hands.
I had a job.
Anyway, I went to a place to interview for the job, and the only reason I went is because I knew that they were not going to give me the job. And the name of that place was Healthcare Staffing, and that's the sign right there. Clap your hands. There was a lady there, and I remember when she did the interview, and she said, "Let me see your resume." I said, "I don't have a resume." She said, "Everybody's got a resume." I said, "I don't." She said, "I know you had a job." I said, "Not really." She said, "You've never worked?" I said, "Well, I had a job, one job." I said, "Well, I didn't want to put it on there because I went to prison from the job." She said, "How many felonies do you have?" I said, I'm be honest with you, ma'am, I don't know. She said, "Are you trying to be funny?" I said, "No, ma'am, I lost count of my felonies a long time ago." She said, "Well, I tell you what, sit down and I'm gonna do a verbal interview with you and we're gonna see how that ends up." By the time I got ready to leave, she said, "I'm gonna give you the highest recommendation I've ever given anybody, and I don't know why. Because that's about believing." She said, "For some reason, there's something about you that I believe in you." They gave me a car, so you know I'm in recovery. Yes, sir. You give me a car and I can leave town and come back in the car, recovery is real. My name is Bill. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I love you and you can't even stop me. There's nothing you can do about it. Thank you for letting me come and share that with you.